should you always trust your intuition? Are there instances where you shouldn't follow your intuition and you should possibly prefer a rational analysis of the situation?
I am an overthinker is something that I used to say. I don't say it anymore because I've decided that if it feels right to me, then I should do it. If I'm going into a state of thinking about it too much and overanalyzing, then it's probably not the right thing to do. And that's not to say that you shouldn't think things through. That's just that if you're beginning to go into a dialogue of negotiation with yourself, you're taking yourself further away from the truth of what you should be doing.
What do you do when your intuition is nudging you towards something that might not necessarily be the best thing? Are there any situations, for example, where, let's say you're alone or you feel alone and your intuition's like, maybe I could just have anyone right now to come cuddle and to not be alone, just to be with someone. Isn't that an instance where your intuition would be counterproductive for your long-term goals?
I would argue that's not your intuition.
What is it then?
Intuition is immediate knowledge or insight. So it's not, you haven't gone into any part of rationalizing through it. It's something that you instantly know, that's the right thing to do. That's the move I need to make. Intuition, I would say, then arises from repeatedly being in certain patterns and then discerning some type of a understanding from it that this is the right move to make when this happens. So if I'm in a situation where I want to text my ex, I'm already beginning to think, is this the right thing to do? Oh, okay, but if I text her, then she might think this, and then I might have a chance of getting back with her. If you go down that route, though, you're further away from what the truth of the matter is, which is that you need to give that attention to yourself.
That's actually interesting. This is making me think of, is it then not your intuition when you have a calling to do something that is entirely based on an external expectation? Like, if I text her now, maybe I can get her back. So that's not really your intuition. That would be your ego, essentially, pretending to be your intuition in order for you to get something out of that action, which is externally derived.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my question would be, would an actual act of intuition be more internally derived rather than externally expected?
Yeah, and I think that plays into the thing that you always say, inner tuition.
Mm-hmm.
That it comes from the inside rather than an expectation of something from the outside, rather than an outer tuition. That's not even a thing. But if you understand it coming from within and that you have a sense, it's a sense. It's a dialogue that comes from within you or through you.
So it is some form of communication within, just not a strategy or a rationalization to that regard.
Absolutely.
Have you found a way for yourself to dissect when it's actual intuition that is aligned with the divine or the infinite versus just another way to change your emotional state quickly through a short-term act?
Yeah, normally when I don't want to do it, that's my intuition. Because otherwise it's like something easy, or it's something that's quick probably. It's the short-term dopamine hit, or it's the thing which is available, or I know I can get, or I can manipulate, or I can grab, versus something which is harder to do, that takes longer time for it to kind of transpire. It requires more belief and faith.
And self-regulation?
Yes, definitely self-regulation.
Okay.
Self-discipline.
Okay, I want to actually lay out a scenario.
It's only, this is also, hold that thought.
Okay.
This is also only in the process, again, of me thinking about it. So intuition's there. That's what I know I need to do. And then there'll be this part of me which tries to rationalize or think through or strategize. And that's when I go down a rabbit hole of negotiation with myself into trying to get the thing or do the thing. The intuition is just in the being.
So let's hypothetically say you're broken up. You had a partner, let's say she broke up with you, and she told you, never text me again. Please delete my number. It's the best for both of us if we're not together anymore. And I just want distance and silence from you. I don't want to hear anything from you. Let's say you're heartbroken. You're sitting at home. You're like 1 week in, 2 weeks in, and you're alone. Start thinking about how nice it was when you guys were watching the Great British Baking Show on TV, eating the snackies, getting the rubbies. And you're like, if she was only able to understand who I could actually become and what I could be for her. She just doesn't understand it. She just doesn't see it. And you're in pain. You're sad. You're like, maybe even a bit desperate. You're like, you know what? Let me send her a text. Let's say in that regard, someone would make the case and try to sell it as their intuition. Oh, I had this inkling that I should be texting her. I think it's the right thing to do because she just doesn't see my side. If I send her this text, maybe she will understand my perspective, and then maybe things will work out. A, is that intuition? And B, if it isn't, what would be the best strategy to make sure you find out that that's actually not your intuition and then not involve in those actions of sending the desperate text message?
She doesn't need to understand your perspective. You do, first of all. You need to understand where you're coming from and that you're outsourcing your feelings to someone else. She's going to be attracted to you when you've elevated to the point that you already are who you say you are. You are being that person. Be it, do it, say it.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to start with the being it. So you have to raise yourself to that vibration. You've got to give yourself that which you seek.
Mm-hmm. So in that regard, that wouldn't be your intuition speaking to you, that inkling of sending her the text message.
Because that's your ego. That's your I wanna feel something back. The Cain and Abel is that you're giving it out in order that you get it back. You need to deal with the things that are holding you back in order that you may transcend them.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to transcend them, you have to look at them. And that is where intuition comes from. The word intuere means to look at. So you need to look at those things within yourself. They're not out there. They're not in her. Does that make sense?
So essentially, intuition then would mean shifting an awareness that transcends both you and her, and look at yourself from a bird's eye and be honest with yourself of what it is you're trying to accomplish here. What is your intention of sending the text message?
Yes.
You mentioned the Cain and Abel story, just to add a little bit of information of what you meant by that, because we spoke about this earlier. When Cain essentially shakes his fist at God and tells him, I sacrificed some of my crop and nothing in my life is working out. Meanwhile, my brother Abel is flourishing. Essentially what you were saying here is he was giving away some of his crop with the expectation to get back.
Mm-hmm.
So he was involved in the tit for tat trait, which is a trait based on your ego and your human self, the one that sees through human eyes. Whereas Abel was giving actually the best of his flock away, not rationalizing of, oh, what's going to happen to me tomorrow? Am I going to have enough to eat? I'm giving away my most valuable possession, but leaning into the intuition of God will have my back and I will be fine. So to relate it back to the text message, sending that to your ex is like, what is actually your intention behind it? Are you sending it back Are you sending that in order to get her back, to regulate your current emotional state of sadness? Are you trying to use her to bring yourself up again to a level of peace or joy? And even, are you sending out that text message to buy yourself 48 or 72 hours of hope in which she may text you back, but in those 2 to 3 days, maybe your level of pain is reduced a little bit because she might text you any moment. So that little bit of excitement, it elevates your emotional state temporarily, only to slam you back down again if she doesn't text you back, or she texts you back and said, bro, I'm going to block you if you don't stop texting me, right? So I guess it also starts with honesty. What's your intention?
Intention, the word intention, but also being in tension. Being
like you're alone. You
like,
want the girl back. You're in literally intention.
That you're tense.
Tense, intention, yeah.
In tension, yeah. So separating those out, and you're going to be, it's one or the other. You're either going to be tense with a feeling of what you expect to come back to you from the world, and that's the pointing out. I'm waiting for it to come back. It's going to come back. Or you're going to do the work inwards on yourself. You're going to do the searching even.
So when you're actually in tension, when you're in despair, when you're in sadness,
just have a banana.
Have a banana. You already had one. Then there is a good chance that your intuition is clouded because you're operating from an energetic level that is low. And when you're operating from an energetic level that is low, and when we say low, we're talking about lower based emotions like survival, like fear, like anger, then your intuition's goal might be just to masquerade some of that emotional pain. So you might confuse sending that text to the ex, your intuition speaking, where it's literally just your ego, your survival self, trying to pull yourself up to a higher energetic state, moving from despair and sadness maybe towards peace. And you're almost negotiating with yourself sending that text message because it's like a short-term band-aid that you're purchasing with that text message. So then, rather than acting out from that lower energetic state, for you to have an intuition in place that serves you long term, you would have to raise your energetic level, your emotional level, away from sadness and despair to a more neutral state to actually hear that voice of intuition more clearly. And that would be exactly what you said. Bringing it back towards yourself, and what can you do to bring yourself up energetically before sending such a text message.
Yeah, because she's already your ex, right? Like in this hypothetical situation, she's already your ex. So you've already parted ways for whatever reason, whether it's your fault or most likely her fault.
Most likely. Absolutely.
But you've already separated. So like, you know intuitively that you shouldn't send the text. And then you go into the process of thinking through it and convincing yourself one way or the other.
Yeah, okay.
So you already know.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
But if she would only see it.
Yeah, if she's just going to see it.
She doesn't know that part of me yet. If she knew that part. Yeah, I would make the case that that girl that told you don't text her and she wants to break up with you, she probably used her own intuition to get away from you. There's something deeply within her that told her, I need to distance myself from that guy. Now you're thinking, if I only send her that text message and convince her that her intuition was wrong, maybe she will come back to me. So what you're trying to do is overwriting her intuitive decision to not be with you based on giving her rational reasonings or different perspectives that you think she hasn't seen. So you're trying to overwrite an emotional system with a rational system, which never works.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work. So you're probably better off, no, you're absolutely better off not sending that text message and working on fixing your own energetic state on your own without her. Because the moment you reach out to her, now whether she responds to you or not, you will have a little bit of hope. That's why you're sending that text message. You have that hope of maybe she responds. Now, when you do that, you're enslaving yourself to externalities in order to improve your own energetic state. You're essentially confessing that the waiting for the text message on her end or her response is regulating yourself emotionally. That's the last thing you want to do, because you're imprisoning yourself to that. So the first step would be, in order to get your intuition upscaled, raise your energetic frequency, because based on what you were saying, your current level of consciousness and your current state of emotion is going to have a strong impact of what your intuition says and how much you can trust it. I would then make the case that maybe you can't trust your intuition when you're in states of very low energy, because it might be your ego masquerading itself as your intuition. What do you think? Or maybe I'm wrong.
When you're talking about low energy states, I'm assuming you're thinking about anger or sadness, depression, anything, a state where you're agitated, or, I mean, interesting that the word depressed, is that what your the frequency of you is. Also, another thing I wanted to ask you about the Dodson levels of consciousness. There's color involved in that as well, in the map of it, right?
In the Hawkins, in the original map, yes, there are colors.
Is that arbitrary?
No, it isn't. It isn't arbitrary.
Can you explain that? For me?
No, because I don't.
Oh,
because
not that...
I haven't read Hawkins and I haven't seen the visual. I'm listening to it.
Okay.
So I haven't really seen the colors, but I do know that the colors are not arbitrary.
Then it's interesting, because that this is kind of language based, but like moving through the colors of your emotions is something that kind of makes sense to me. And color psychology is very interesting to me. I don't think that there's any lack of coincidence in the fact that anger is associated with red. Certainly when it comes to blood, but then there's other things that are also associated with red in terms of color psychology, like stop signs, for example, because it's a color that makes us kind of, take a step back. And there's other things that are associated with specific colors. And I don't know what that's to do with on the light spectrum or the way that we perceive light. And I'm not sure how that's connected to the brain directly, but naturally we're drawn to things. Green, for example, is a color that has a different effect to red. And, if you're sat in a blue is associated with sadness for some reason, but why is that across the board? I'm not saying this is kind of a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting when it comes to energy levels and how people progress through those.
And when we speak about energy levels, we are essentially speaking about emotions.
Yes.
Anything from the lowest level of emotion, which is shame and guilt, to the highest levels of emotion, which are peace, joy, love, bliss, enlightenment, and everything in between.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure how these things correlate with each other. All I do know is that I'm kind of exploring this at the moment with music production, but being in different colored environments to see how it makes me feel emotionally, and then how that changes the kind of music that I write, or at least even maybe it regulates my mood to be in an orange room differently than it does for me to be in a yellow room or a green room or a blue room. And I'm doing that just with the lights in my unit. But
what makes you decide what color you want to go with? Is it your intuition? Do you just wake up?
I'm going through the colors of the rainbow, 7 colors that are the most standard colors that we experience. And I'm just going in order of one per day. Red Monday, orange Tuesday, yellow Wednesday, green, blue.
Do you feel any difference?
Yeah.
Yeah? For example, what was it that you experienced based on color?
On the different days?
Yeah.
I mean, this is maybe somewhat subjective to me, but I have a different feeling from different colours on different days. Red makes me feel more like, oh. Orange makes me feel upbeat and optimistic. Yellow makes me feel kind of bright and positive. And this is also translating into the types of keys I'm writing in as well. I don't know if there's any correlation with that, but I'm sure there probably is some kind of actual scientific backing to that. I'm wondering how deep that goes as well in terms of how it can be combined with intuition. And I mean intuition in terms of, if intuition is our sense, our guiding principle, if it is our method to be able to heal by finding the most clear pathway to something rather than diverting into this world, if that is the path, the way, then it may have a frequency aligned with it in so much as the lower you are on the energy, emotional regulation state, the shame or anger or whatever else would be this type of a wave, would be a chaotic frequency to be at, because it would have highs and lows. And peace, you would imagine, is probably a much more stable frequency across all of the range of it.
Right.
Because it involves peace, calm, silence, stability. And maybe there are colours that are associated to that. And that's why it's like colours of moods. Like red is angry, isn't it? If you think about it like that.
Could also be love, though.
It could be.
Could be, yeah. But
love's probably a bit more pinky.
is it pink? Like your jersey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I wore it, bro.
Yeah,
Man,
I can feel it, bro. Yeah. It's warm and fuzzy.
I want to just show you the love today.
I appreciate that. I guess then it makes sense to look at intuition as a tool that plays itself out based on your current emotional state.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you think about everything we're trying to do is to change our emotional states. We're just using actions and situations to change those emotions. When we're sad, we don't want to be sad. When we're not excited, we want to kind of be excited. When we're in fear, we want to probably move to a state more neutral. So for example, in that pyramid of emotions, anger is above fear because fear makes you paralyzed. Anger at least allows you to approach situations. So we're always trying to regulate ourselves emotionally. And what emotional regulation, in that sense, what I mean by that is take a step up in emotion, elevate yourself emotionally. So then your intuition, if you're in a state of a negative emotion, such as sadness or fear, your intuition might just nudge you towards doing anything that regulates yourself emotionally more quickly. And if you also think about the more survival states of emotion, like fear,
I'd still argue that that's not your intuition then, if it's for the short term.
Yes, exactly. So what I'm saying is, when you're in a state of fear, you're in a state of essentially survival from an evolutionary standpoint. So you might actually go for short-term gratification over that which is good for you in the long run. We've spoken about these experiments where they tie your socioeconomic status to short-term versus long-term gratification. If you come from poverty, where survival and fear is much more a baseline emotion than when you're in mid or high socioeconomic status, you will prefer short-term gratification over long-term gratification. Now, if you think about that from
it's because you feel like you're in a limited space, right? There's limited resources. I must make use of those while they're here.
Correct. And on top of that, there is a temporal component to it. You don't know, evolutionarily speaking, how close you are to death. So when you're in a state of fear and survival, death just waits around the corner. And because your timeline subconsciously is shorter than someone who's in a state of peace, you're gathering as much as you can as quickly as possible. Now, if we relate that to intuition, actually, I think that could be something of misusing your intuition. When you're in a state of fear, and you have this primitive instinct within you of survival and short-term gratification, your intuition might nudge you towards the quickest possible method, not the best possible method, to regulate yourself emotionally. And that may not be your intuition. That might be your ego telling you to do so. But you might negotiate with yourself that it is the intuition. Because I've spoken to people that were in situations like this where the ex left them. They're like, bro, but I have a feeling I just need to reach out to her.
And they're in the negotiation stage, so it's not.
But they sell it as intuition to themselves.
Yeah.
So you have to be very careful then from what energetic state you're operating on or out of. And possibly give yourself some time to regulate yourself emotionally to a more neutral state. And then reassess that voice within, you know?
Yeah, well, definitely it's the voice within. I think this is an important point. I think, again, stop thinking about it. Just act on it. If you have that feeling from the inner voice, like it's your most quiet inner voice, I would call it then the inner whisper. If it's a loud voice that's constantly yapping at you, telling you to do the thing, it's not your intuition, then it's your ego. If it's a calm, softly spoken voice, it's your intuition. If it only says it once and you know that it's the one, it's the one.
So it's that solid, deep noise, not that superficial chatter that's just
screaming. Not the one that's going,
it's not the kid.
No, it's not nudging you towards it. It's not a Facebook poke. It's telling you calmly, you know what you need to do. It's that. And no way is if you're going into the process of thinking about it, negotiating with it, talking back to it, having any dialogue with it, rather than just listening, that it's your intuition when you just listen and you absorb and then you act.
When you just listen and absorb. So to a certain degree, you need stillness for that.
Absolutely.
So you need to sit in stillness, detached from too many people for some time in order to find that voice within you.
Bro, I told you about this like yesterday. I was feeling lonely. I was thinking into the point where I was like, I want some comfort. I want to cuddle. So I was then beginning the process of going outside of myself to source that. Where could that come from? It'd be nice if down memory lane. But what I found was actually the thing that I needed was to be back in my communication with my highest self or God or prayer or whatever. I needed to go outside. I went outside to go stretch.
To cool off?
Kinda. I went to get outside of myself.
Did it require a lot of effort for you to do that?
No. I was laying on my bed and I was just kind of looking around the room, and then I was just like, you know what? This is not where I need to be. This is not it. I'm going to go outside.
Do you think if you didn't go outside and you would let those thoughts play out a little bit longer, it would have possibly opened you up to the idea of...
Maybe, because then what happens? What's the next thing that happens?
Yeah.
I then begin, maybe it goes to the TV and I distract myself with that, or it goes to something on my phone, and then that could potentially lead me down an avenue of, maybe I'll text this person. Because I'm in the wandering out mode at that point, aren't I?
So you sever it.
So I'm like, no, I'm going to go outside. I'm just going to go and be outside for a bit. I'm going to be in fresh air. I'm going to go and stretch. Because I was tense. I was in tension, thinking too much. But and this and that. I'm off. I'm down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So what I needed was to leave where I was, leave the enclosed environment, and go outside, get into some breathing, go stretch myself out, loosen out that loosey-goosey, baby. That's what I needed to get. The quiet. That's what I needed, right? Now, was it what I needed? Yes. Did I need to go and have a stretch? Yes. Is it all good? As soon as I had the stretch, was it all good? Yes.
And you did though, man. You did. I think you've trained yourself also to the extent where it happens for you more quickly. Was it always like that, or did you have times where...
No, dude. Many times I've failed on that one. That's one of the hardest hills to get over.
What allowed you to train yourself to the extent where now you're just better at it and not let your ego guide that decision making, but listen to that intuition of taking a step back, going up there, stretching, raising your emotional state from a more sadder state to a more neutral state, and then reevaluate and look at the world again.
One of the things that you taught me, landscape view, that helps. Actually
Literally.
seeing things from a wider perspective, like trying to distance myself from, oh, woe is me, and seeing it from that perspective, and like going outside and seeing the world like that, rather than from like inside of a room where I've got like just a little poke out through a window. Then I get to go and see things from a wider perspective, and all of a sudden there's actual fresh air, and like some of these little things really make the massivest difference.
Yeah.
That's not something that I've mastered by any means. It's just something that I'm in the process of practicing more regularly. I notice that feeling coming up. Oh, I'm feeling lonely again. Oh, I'm feeling this way. All right, okay, what do I need to do to fix that? What's worked for me in the past? I've told you about this before. Like I just need to go for a walk. Like sometimes it's just as basic as that.
So in that example, you were able to distinguish between your intuition telling you should go up and stretch and your ego telling you, oh yeah, maybe I should text that person, or maybe I should turn on the TV. So it was crystal clear for you what your intuition was, the voice of your intuition was, versus what the voice of your ego was.
Mm-hmm. I think I may have even tried calling you last night, because sometimes all it can take is that little bit of communication. Again, it's the inner dialogue. So you can have that in a state of silence. You can communicate with that part of yourself, but it can become something that can be hard to reach sometimes. So it might be easy to try and reach out to someone, because a lot of the times you hear something from someone's voice, like you on a phone, you would have snapped me back into that very, very quickly. You'd have been like, it's all right, man, a bruder. And all of a sudden I'm back. And it helped. Like last night I had football. So I was immediately, I knew that if I could make it to this point, I was going to be around some people, and all of a sudden I'm just going to pop back out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But in the interim, it was that small period of time where I had too much time to think. Like I'd done my day's work. I had this little gap of time where I was laying there, and I was just like, this is not where I need to be. Like I need to go outside and bridge that gap to get to the next sort of stage.
Yeah. So I think probably one of the mechanisms to get through that is to transcend your current state and look at the situation through the eyes of the person that is at a better emotional state and act from that. If you were someone that is at a state of peace or joy, you wouldn't think about sending that text right now to get your ex back. You're only wanting to send that text because you're sad and lonely. So part of the ability to actually get the real voice of intuition is shifting your perspective, and by shifting your perspective, being able to switch from short-term emotional regulation to long-term what's best for you. So it seems like that's the battle. Yeah, but I don't want to feel that way right now, versus what's best for you long run, not sending that text.
Yeah.
I understand you want to get out of that emotional pain, so that's why you want to do that. But at the same time, I think one thing that will allow you to not do it, if you train yourself that you are the summary of the decisions you make exactly in these moments, which either allow you to build self-trust or to lose self-trust. Because self-trust in itself is doing the things you know you should be doing and not doing the things you know you shouldn't be doing. So when you know you shouldn't be texting that person and you're texting them, what are you doing to self-trust? You're diminishing it. Every time you're reducing self-trust, what is the likelihood that in the next scenario where you're facing a situation like that, you're doing the right thing? It's going down. With each decision that violates self-trust, your likelihood of making the right decision next time goes down again. On the other hand, if you're able to pull through and do what's the right thing to do, which is not text, what are you doing? You're building self-trust. So to that regard, your intuition is earned over iterations of decisions that you make in difficult situations like that. And ultimately, you have to realize that your level of self-trust will always be the ceiling for your desires and goals and the intentions that you set. You can have the most noble intention. If it's there, if your intention is at 1,000, the goal is as noble as it gets. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to make money and then, help everyone around me. But your self-trust is here because you're violating your intuition all the time. Then ultimately you are not going to be able to reach that goal because your self-trust will always trump your intention and your goal setting and your desires. Knowing that will give you, hopefully, that extra bit of strength to not do it and choose something instead, like going outside. You mentioned going to soccer, playing with people on a pitch with a group of people. That raises your energetic level, but it raises your energetic level by doing the right thing. You've earned the raise in energetic frequency. You've earned that feeling of peace now, that transition from sadness to peace. Whereas, let's say you sent that text, you haven't earned it. You're sending something out in the expectation of hearing back from her. So what you're actually doing is you're placing a little Band-Aid on your wound of loneliness, which ultimately will make the wound just grow bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and you're also just fishing for it, right? You're sending it out and hoping that you're implying that I hope she sends something back.
Yeah.
We're building something either way, You're going to build the house that you live in. You're either building it on sand or you're building it on the rock. So it's down to you to kind of place those firm foundations in the place that you know that when the storm comes, that it's not going to get blown away. And that comes from making better decisions. So you have to make those decisions quickly, and you have to make them with intention, not through wanting something from outside. That's where it comes from, I think.
So when you're in a situation then like that, one thing is, be honest with yourself first. What's your intention that you're trying to accomplish with that action?
Yeah, and then maybe even asking the second question, does that come from a source of inner tension?
Yeah. Yes. So what is your current state of emotion?
Yeah.
If you're in a low state of emotion and what you're trying to do externally is just lifting yourself up, ask yourself if it's the right thing to do. Now, going to soccer and raising your emotion by doing that, you know that it's the right thing. Use your common sense versus sending out a desperate text message to someone or chasing after someone who doesn't want to be with you. Where you intuitively know that just makes you weaker and does make you weaker via that link to self-trust. Whereas not doing it and going, playing the game and raising yourself emotionally, you've earned that raise in emotional frequency.
I think that's the important point as well, the earning part of it, because you're not trying to jump up so however many levels in the emotional state regulation by getting it from the outside source. You're moving up a little bit at a time. Because if you're trying to jump all the way up to the top, you're outsourcing your worthiness, aren't you? You're trying to get her to say, "Oh, it's all good, baby," da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden, you've transcended from feeling like down to feeling loved. But you just need to give that to yourself.
And dude, that's spot on, man. That's facts. And also, let's even say that happens, and the girl comes and says, "Yes, I made the biggest mistake. I want to be with you." If that happens, because of the raise you get in emotional frequency, you'll go from sadness to joy and bliss and love within seconds when she responds to you. You're actually subconsciously gonna view her as the source of light for you, quite literally, the thing that regulates yourself emotionally. So you're gonna make your emotional regulation dependent on her and replace her with everything else that can do that. The car, the house, the friend, the job, the raise, the boss. Every time you allow anyone to play with your emotional state to that extent, you're actually confessing subconsciously that it's not you who is in charge, but the external world. And when the external world is in charge, they can slam you back down as quickly as they brought you up. That's why the wise man is the same in pleasure and in pain, right? That's what they say. It's like you stay neutral, independent of the things that happen around you, which essentially means you are not outsourcing your emotional regulation.
The straight whizzy.
Whizzy, 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 whizzy.
Matty and Pracky. Meine Brüder.
Mein Bruder.
Prost.
Prost, Bro.